There is either an Ebola outbreak that will end human society or not that big of a deal happening right now. It depends who you're listening to. So we wanted to break down some facts for you. So right now in Western Africa, they are having the worst Ebola outbreak that they've ever had. There have been about 930 deaths and about 1,700 cases. And this is going on in Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Nigeria. And we've got some more info for you. The disease spreads via bodily fluids, so it is not airborne. We got to just put that out there right now because that's what a lot of people are afraid of. The death count has grown to 887 as of August 4th, so I was just giving you the updated numbers with a total of about 1,600 likely diagnosed victims. So far, the fatality rate from this outbreak has been about 60%, which could rise to about 90%. And right now, there is no vaccine for Ebola, though the World Health Organization reports that there are several being tested. And let's look at a timeline of what's going on here. The first Ebola epidemic was in 1976, and the disease killed 280 people, which was 88% of the people who became infected. Okay, so now let's bring this back to America for a second. So we had 2 doctors over there that were treating people with Ebola, and they got infected with Ebola. They are now in Atlanta at the CDC, and they are quarantined, so we'll see what happens with that. People have been freaking out. Donald Trump, who I get all my information from, he was on Twitter freaking out about why are we bringing these people back. Again, it is not airborne, but I don't have any great faith in the government that they're not going to somehow screw this up and make it airborne. Who knows? We will see. But before we get into all the specifics, let's just look at a little info on what Ebola actually does. Okay, so symptoms typically begin 4 to 9 days after exposure, though the incubation period could last for up to 21 days. The first couple days, days 1 through 3, you have flu-like symptoms and profound weakness. Days 4 through 7, patients may also have vomiting, diarrhea, nausea, low blood pressure, headaches, and anemia. Days 7 through 10, toward the end of the illness, there's confusion and bleeding, both internal and visible. All of this progresses toward coma, shock, and death. Okay. So pretty bad stuff. Cara, you clean up all the science messes that I create, so I'm not even going to give you a question. I'm just going to let you talk.
A little bit of cleanup mode.
Yes.
So first and foremost, the earliest outbreak ever of Ebola was in Central Africa. Obviously, physicians had never seen Ebola, so they weren't sure how to contain it. That's why the death toll was as high as it was, and that's why the actual rate of people dying versus people getting infected was nearly 90%. Now, that is the number that a lot of people are citing now. Ebola, has a 90% death rate. But what we're seeing in West Africa now is actually closer to 60%. What we would see in America if Ebola took hold here would be significantly lower because we have significantly better health practices than we're seeing in those regions. So that's number one to remember. A lot of people are really, really afraid of these 2 physicians coming over to, they're actually in an Emory hospital.
All right, so I think the thing was built by the CDC, but they're at Emory Hospital.
CDC's like right next door. So they've got a lot of CDC influence there. There is very, very, very minimal risk of anybody else getting infected. These individuals are heavily quarantined. There are so many safeguards being taken. Ebola is very easily killed by disinfectants. Cleaning up after an individual is a very easy way to prevent transmission of the disease. It's actually quite hard to catch. One way that a lot of physicians will tell you to think about Ebola is think about it like HIV. So you can catch HIV from transmission of bodily fluids, from blood, from semen, from saliva if there's blood in the saliva. It's very hard to catch HIV by shaking somebody's hand, by sitting on the same train as them. Ebola is very similar in that way. So I think that's a really important thing for people to realize that they don't often.
Yeah. So why aren't people talking about that?
That was pretty much what I was just going to ask you. So I wanted you to clean it up, and then that was what I was going to say to you, is I wanted to do this segment because this isn't what people are talking about. If you turn on the news, pandemic, freak out, everything. And of course, that's what the news has trained us to do. So what is the deal? Is this just the nature of the news? It's 24-hour news cycle. We got to freak people out at all costs.
Yeah, I think it's so they can keep watching.
Yeah.
What? Like if they thought, oh, well, all is well, they're going to turn their televisions off and then just go about their day.
Yeah.
So, they want to sit in front of it. They want to see like the craziness ensue and they want to keep people watching. So they don't tell us that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well,
Thank you.
I think one thing also that's important to remember is that, I mean, 1,600 people is an outbreak. Like, this is dangerous, but Ebola is not what you read in Hot Zone.
It's not what I saw on Outbreak.
In Outbreak,
it's not Outbreak or Contagion.
Or Contagion.
I'm literally like Rene Russo. I was like, should I go get a suit and like?
Yeah, but you know what? It didn't work out that well for Rene Russo.
It really didn't. She died in the end.
And here's the thing: if you were an aid worker in West Africa, in Sierra Leone, in Nigeria, or not Nigeria. Nigeria, there's only one case, and it's not even a confirmed Ebola case, or maybe it's two. But that was the big initial fears, that it spread to Nigeria, which is actually a large populated country in the capital there. But Sierra Leone and Guinea and where else is it in West Africa? Liberia, exactly. These are less populated areas. The reason that you see this huge jump between 1976 and now is that they are more urbanized. More people can get on planes. So there are people who have access to moving around Africa that they didn't have before. And also, distrust of Western medicine has spiked in West Africa. And what we're seeing is that the aid workers are going in and they're saying, you may be infected. They're taking family members away, and the family members are coming back in body bags. And this is very frightening to these individuals. Also, it's customary in Africa that in death rituals, they actually wash the bodies. And this is a really easy way to transmit the disease. And so a lot of people are catching it, and they're not listening to the council that says, you cannot come in contact with the infected. It's the only way to stop the spread.
Right, so you've given us a lot of the heavy lifting here. I, of course, watched the first episode of The Strain last night, which didn't help my paranoia at all, because that's pretty much all it's about. So, all right, now that we've gotten sort of the factual part of it, so let's go with the fun jump part of it, which is the contagion part and the outbreak part. Do you think one day that stuff is eventually going to end up here? Like those movies, I loved both of those movies.
Right.
I mean, do you think that that's sort of, not with this specifically, but it could somehow it could become something could become airborne,
It could be
right?
a form of terrorism in a way. If somebody wanted to do that, they could use it as a form of terrorism. I wanted to ask, like, I had heard that there is a serum that is working, because they're saying that there's no vaccine, but now they do have a serum that seems to be working. They shipped it over to Africa. What is that?
Well, here's the issue here. There are a lot of treatments that are in the works that we know might work on organisms that aren't human. You know, that we can have an Ebola, a type of Ebola in a pig or in a monkey, and then we're going to try and treat it. And there have been really big strides that have been made in the lab. Unfortunately, this is a big sticking point for a lot of people, because if we do go into these countries and we do try a treatment that ends up either failing or that ends up having some sort of horrible side effect, that distrust is going to spike even more. And so what we know now is the best way to treat Ebola is to quarantine the victims.
Yeah.
The victims may die, they may not, depending on how strong their immune systems are, but if you quarantine them, you won't see any more spread of the disease. That's the #1 thing to do. As far as a pandemic, an epidemic that could take out
Give me something for my science
before.
fiction. Yeah.
We've seen it with bubonic plague, we've seen it with Spanish flu, we've seen like horrible, horrible diseases that we didn't understand at that point, that we didn't know how to contain. And I don't think it's that unlikely a scenario that something like that could happen. Of course, medicine has grown leaps and bounds. There's a really good book by David Quammen called Spillover that's all about this, and I recommend it to anybody who reads still. Pick that book up.
There's probably an audiobook.
But I would say that my bigger fear, I agree with
Terrorism.
you, would be weaponizing certain types of diseases in order to make them difficult to treat and in order to make them heavily transmissible.
Yeah.
It would be engineered.
So, all right, so last thought on this, I'll let you finish up, is how much can we pay attention to this stuff then? You know what I mean? Like, you can worry about the specifics of this, and then you can worry about the terror angle or all that. How much brain power are you giving this stuff on a day-to-day basis?
I think I just check in daily, check the news, kind of like, click on things, and I think that's all you can do. You just kind of like educate yourself and then don't freak out about it. I mean, that's what they want you to do. They want you to live and instill fear in you so that you freak out and you keep watching the news all day long. And it's, just like educate yourself and move on and let the fear go.
All right, well, yeah.
Don't listen to Donald Trump.
Don't
listen to him.
That's a general theme.
In general.
Yeah, in general.
Don't listen to Donald Trump.
All right, well, I hope we did a little bit of what Nikki just said right there, so that you got some facts and maybe you won't be freaking out, but you know a little something and you can do a little more research. And Cara, you get a gold star.
Yay, Cara!
There you go. Round of applause for Cara.